The day my future stalled out smelled like motor oil and burnt coffee. I was standing in our gravel driveway, acceptance letter to Wichita Community College in one hand, mason jar of tuition savings in the other. That jar was no fancy trust fund. Just 12 months of burger flipping tips and babysitting cash. Crumpled bills folded tight. It felt heavier than gold because it was supposed to buy me freedom. Mom leaned against Dad's rust-red pickup, wiping sweat off her forehead. "Sweetheart," she started, voice wobbling like a loose lug nut, "we need to talk about that money." Before I could answer, Dad slid from beneath the hood holding a blown head gasket. Black, warped, useless. "Truck's dead without a full rebuild," he said. "I can't make deliveries, and if I don't work, none of us eat." I waited for the punchline. It never came. Mom reached for the jar, eyes shiny with apology I wasn't ready to accept. "We'll pay you back," she whispered like that promise could glue my heart together. I felt every dollar slipping from my fingers, transforming into pistons and timing belts I'd never see. $2,000 gone in a single sentence. Rage hit first, hot, sharp, unfair. I'd skip prom, extra fries, even winter boots to keep feeding that jar. Dad's truck? It guzzled more cash than it ever hauled. Then came guilt because he really did need wheels to keep his courier job. But sympathy couldn't erase the cold fact. My tuition deadline was 1 week away, and my safety net just got yanked. Neighbors will say it's only community college, just wait another year. They don't know Kansas winters on factory floors or how dreams rust faster than tailgates. Standing there, fingers sticky with grease, I made a silent vow. If that engine could roll again, so could I on my own terms. So buckle up. Because losing every cent in that jar didn't steer me off course. It revved the engine inside me. And the road I chose next? Let's just say it left more than a few jaws hanging open. Keep watching, you're about to see how a broken gasket lit the fuse that launched my life. I didn't say a word that night. Not during dinner, not when Dad cheered at the football game on the dusty old TV, not even when Mom placed a bowl of mac and cheese in front of me like everything was fine. My appetite had gone dry, and so had my trust. Lying awake in the dark, I counted ceiling cracks and ran numbers in my head. Tuition, $2,000, books, maybe $300 more, bus fare, another $60 per month. I had exactly zero. The jar was empty, and so was the spot in me that used to believe things would work out. Next morning, I skipped breakfast and walked 5 miles into town. The community college was on Main Street, right between the Dollar General and the thrift shop. I stepped into the admissions office with a knot in my stomach and hope on life support. I was accepted for the fall program, I told the lady behind the glass. But I just lost the money I was gonna use for tuition. Is there any way I could delay payment? She gave me that sad smile people use when they're about to say no. Unfortunately, sweetheart, tuition's due in full by Friday. No payment plans for first-year students. I nodded, thanked her, and walked straight to the bulletin board outside the cafeteria, the one layered in crooked flyers and fading ink. I tore off every tab for jobs. Dishwasher at Big Joe's Diner, night shift at the gas station, house cleaning for seniors, pet sitting, temp warehouse shifts. By the end of the day, I'd left my name and number on 6 voicemail machines and filled out 4 paper applications. One manager at Joe's actually looked me in the eye and said, "If you can work 6 to midnight Friday through Sunday, the job's yours." Done. That first shift nearly broke me. Grease popped my skin raw, dishes piled like mountains, and my feet throbbed by hour 3. But I walked out with $42 in tips and a new kind of hunger. Not for food, for progress. The next morning, I woke up at 5, packed PB&J sandwiches, and walked to Miss Wanda's house across the tracks. She was 82, nearly blind, and needed help cleaning once a week. I vacuumed, scrubbed her tub, and reorganized her pantry. She paid me $20 and sent me home with leftover meatloaf and hugs that smelled like lavender lotion. By Thursday, I'd scraped together $186. Still miles away from what I needed, but enough to prove one thing. I wasn't powerless. On Friday morning, Mom handed me toast with jelly like nothing had happened. "You heading to the college today?" she asked, almost too casually. I stared at the toast, then at her. "Yeah, but not to enroll." Her shoulders sank. "Honey, I told you we'll try to help next semester. You mean if the truck doesn't need new tires?" I cut in. "Or if the fridge doesn't go out. Or if Dad doesn't need a new tool set." She didn't reply. That afternoon, I went back to the admissions office, not to beg for more time, but to ask for the form to defer my admission. I'd try again next semester, but this time on my terms, with money they couldn't touch. Walking home, I passed a secondhand bookstore. In the window was a used nursing textbook, same edition listed on my class requirements sheet. $10. I bought it because I wasn't done. I was just getting started, and the version of me that came out of that setback? She wasn't soft. She was steel. Keep watching. What comes next isn't just about getting to college. It's about building a future so solid not even a busted truck could stop it. The next sunrise found me at our wobbly kitchen table, flipping that used nursing textbook like it was scripture. The spine cracked, pages smelled of highlighters from students I would never meet, but every scribbled margin note felt like a private tutor cheering me on. I told myself one fierce truth: if nobody else was buying my future, I would build it from overtime and coffee grounds. By mid-July, my week ran on a brutal rhythm. Monday through Wednesday, I clocked into a produce warehouse at 4 in the morning, stacking crates of cantaloupes until my shoulders screamed. I left smelling like bruised fruit, biked 3 miles home, showered in 2 minutes flat, then opened the textbook while my hair was still dripping. Evenings were reserved for Big Joe's Diner, where I refilled sodas and pretended the clatter of plates was applause. Tips went straight into a shoebox labeled Tuition 2.0, wedged behind winter coats in the closet, far from any curious hands. One Friday night the diner's door chimed and an EMT stepped up to the counter, uniform streaked with engine grime. He ordered black coffee, then asked why my eyes looked heavier than the pot. I spilled the short version. He whistled low and said, "Our volunteer rescue squad needs help on Saturdays. You'll learn more about patient care in 1 month than any intro class. Free training? Real experience?" I signed on the spot. Saturday mornings became ambulance mornings. The first call was an elderly farmer who'd slipped in his barn. I knelt in hay, held rough fingers, and repeated vitals while the EMT wrapped a splint. Adrenaline pounded louder than sirens, but something inside me clicked. This was where my stubbornness made sense. During a late shift, he slid a pamphlet across the diner counter. The state's Homegrown Healers Scholarship. Full tuition for nursing students who logged community service hours and wrote an essay on rural healthcare needs. Deadline, 2 weeks. I read the date twice, heart punching my ribs. 2 weeks might as well be 2 minutes, but I refused to flinch. First requirement, 50 documented service hours. I hustled extra ambulance rides, evening shifts at the county free clinic, even reading blood pressure for seniors after church. Miss Wanda signed every form with a flourish, bragging that her adopted granddaughter would be the best nurse in Kansas. Second requirement, recommendation letters. Big Joe typed his on grease-smudged letterhead during his cigarette break. The EMT pinned one in perfect firefighter penmanship. My warehouse supervisor scrawled another after I covered a double shift so he could attend his kid's recital. Sleep turned into short naps over lukewarm coffee, but the essay still needed life. I borrowed a library computer 3 nights in a row, crafting sentences about ambulance sirens echoing across cornfields and the dignity of keeping elders safe at home. On the final evening, the ancient desktop froze, erasing 5 paragraphs. Panic surged, but the librarian let me stay after closing. I rewrote the essay from scratch, printed 3 copies, and jogged through a summer thunderstorm to the post office minutes before midnight. The clerk stamped the envelope while rain dripped from my bangs onto the counter. Then came the waiting. I stocked melons, flipped burgers, and studied pharmacology flashcards during 15-minute breaks. Dad bragged about the truck purring better than ever, revving the engine like a victory trumpet. I just nodded and tightened my grip on that shoebox of cash. 3 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived, state seal shining through the mailbox grime. I locked myself in the bathroom, tore it open, and read the word every exhausted muscle had prayed for: congratulations. Tuition covered, books covered, small stipend for uniforms. My knees buckled onto cracked tile, laughter snagged with tears. I called Miss Wanda first. She cried harder than I did. That night at the diner, Big Joe rang the service bell and announced the news to every booth: free pie on the house. I walked home under streetlights humming with June bugs, shoebox tucked beneath my arm, heart roaring louder than any pickup. The road ahead was still long, but now it was mine, paid for with sweat, kindness, and the unbreakable promise I'd made in a grease-stained driveway. Orientation morning broke crisp and bright, a harvest gold dawn over the Kansas plains. Uniform folded on the dresser, shoebox of cash still hidden behind coats, and the scholarship letter taped above the desk, my new trinity of purpose. I rode the city bus 40 minutes to campus, clutching a thrift store backpack that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume and determination. When the driver announced Health Sciences Building, my heart hammered like it was still on ambulance duty. Inside, a swarm of freshmen shuffled toward lecture hall seats, murmuring about dorm assignments and textbook prices. No one knew I had pulled 12 straight weeks of double shifts to sit in that chair. The dean welcomed us, voice booming over the mic, and asked scholarship recipients to stand for recognition. Knees shaking, I rose with 6 others. Applause rippled through the hall, soft yet electrifying. For the first time since that jar emptied, the world acknowledged the fight it took to reach this point. Classes, however, didn't care about applause. Anatomy lab hit like a freight train. By week 2, my flashcards sprouted neon tabs: cranial nerves, cardiac cycle, drug dose math. Study broke up only by warehouse dawns, diner nights, and ambulance Saturdays. Sleep lived wherever it could, on bus rides, in library corners, during spin cycles at the laundromat. Still, each exam grade glowed with steady B+ to A- amber, proof that grit could muscle through fatigue. Mid-September, while restocking onions at Big Joe's, my phone buzzed. Dad's contact flashed. I wiped my hands and answered. Truck died again, he said, frustration carving every word. Transmission this time. Any chance you? A silence opened like a chasm between us. Last spring's gasket memory flooded back. The jar, the promise, the driveway guilt. I inhaled. I wish I could help, I said, steady but not cruel. My scholarship covers tuition, but not their truck. He muttered something about mechanics and hung up. Guilt prickled, yet relief followed. Boundaries, like stitches, hurt while healing. 2 days later, Mom texted a picture of Dad under the hood, grease up to his elbows, captioned, doing his best. I stared at the photo in the campus cafeteria, spaghetti cooling untouched. Part of me wanted to rush home with every penny left, but another part, the one that had climbed hayloft ladders at 5 a.m., said hold steady. Sometimes love meant not bailing out the same mistake twice. October arrived carrying crisp air and the county fair. The volunteer squad ran first aid booths near the Ferris wheel. I bandaged blistered heels and handed out water to dizzy kids. Saturday evening, the fair committee handed each volunteer a funnel cake ticket. Powdered sugar floated in the breeze like first snow. I bit into fried dough, laughter bubbling out because, for once, sweetness cost me nothing. That night, scrolling social media before sleep, I spotted a local newspaper article. Scholarship winner balances 3 jobs and ambulance duty. My photo, hair frizzed under fluorescent diner lights, sat above 2 paragraphs praising work ethic and rural healthcare dreams. I'd forgotten the reporter who asked quick questions at the fair booth. The piece felt harmless, maybe even motivating, until breakfast next morning. Mom burst into the diner during slow hour, article clutched, eyes rimmed red. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded, sliding into a booth. Before I could answer, Dad trudged in behind her, face unreadable. Big Joe raised a brow from the grill, then wisely retreated to the storeroom. I poured them coffee and sat opposite. Words tangled in my throat, but I forced them out. Because I didn't want congratulations to feel like permission slips, I said. I needed to know I could stand on my own. Mom's gaze dropped to her mug. We never meant to hold you back, she whispered. I know I said, and I did. They chose survival their way. I chose mine. Still, the wound ached. Dad cleared his throat. Transmissions fixed. Borrowed from a buddy, paying him back monthly. His eyes searched mine, something like apology flickering there. We'll be at your pinning ceremony in spring if you'll have us. My heart thumped. Let's get through midterms first, I managed, half smiling. They left a $20 tip for a $2 coffee tab. Small steps count. Midterms slammed down like hail on tin. Pharmacology multiple choice, clinical skills practical, group project on rural telehealth. Warehouse hours trimmed to 2 mornings, diner to weekends only, so study could breathe. Miss Wanda pressed a thermos of chicken noodle into my hands every Thursday, calling it brain soup. Grades landed, 2 A's, 1 high B. Celebration was an extra hour of sleep and a peanut butter milkshake shared with Marisol under streetlights. November's chill slip through jacket seems the same week the dean announced scholarship brunch for donors and recipients. Dress code, business casual. Closest thing I owned was a thrift store blazer 1 size too large. Miss Wanda hemmed the sleeves while gossiping about her bridge club. Big Joe loaned a tie he insisted made me look Dr. Official. At the brunch, white linens and miniature quiches replaced cafeteria trays. I recognized 2 state senators, a hospital CEO, and the EMT who first handed me the pamphlet, now in crisp suit instead of navy jumpsuit. Donors mingled, asking polite questions. One gray-haired woman leaned in, "What kept you from giving up?" Without pause I answered, "The siren doesn't stop just because you're tired." She laughed, then handed me her card, Director of Nursing at a regional medical center. Call me when you're licensed. Networking, they call it. I called it another door inching open. Back home, Dad's truck rumbled healthier and tension cooled to cautious peace. Thanksgiving morning, while turkey scented the trailer, he knocked on my doorframe holding a small wrapped box. Inside lay a stethoscope, not top-shelf electronic, but sturdy stainless steel. Savings from overtime hauling grain, he said. Figured you'd need your own. Couldn't fix the past, but I can help a little now. The gesture weighed more than any jar. Final exams loomed like grain silos on the horizon, tall and unavoidable. I scheduled shifts around study marathons, practiced blood pressure checks on Miss Wanda's teddy bear, and recited drug categories while flipping burgers. The night before pathophysiology, power went out in a thunderstorm. Candlelight flickered over notes as rain hammered the roof. Instead of panic, I felt an odd calm. Darkness had never stopped progress before. Why would it now? December 12th, semester grades posted, straight as. I printed the report card, slid it into an envelope with a note, "Thanks for the engine that started this journey," and left it on the kitchen table for Mom and Dad. Later, I found the envelope propped on my pillow, their reply scribbled in Dad's shaky hand. Proud doesn't cover it. Snow fell that night, blanketing fields and muffling every sound except my footsteps crunching toward the bus stop. I thought of the gasket, the jar, the shoebox, and how each loss fueled the gain that followed. First semester down, a lifetime to go, a road I was no longer crawling but striding, stethoscope packed, future humming like a well-tuned engine. And if you think this story ends with one semester and a shiny report card, buckle in. Spring clinical, spring needles, night shifts, and a curveball none of us saw coming. But that's a tale for tomorrow's ride. Spring semester rolled in on a bitter wind, the kind that whistles through trailer seams and makes even thick socks feel thin. Clinical rotations started the first Monday after New Year's, sunrise still hidden behind frost-silver clouds. At 5:30, I boarded the regional bus headed north to Mercy County Hospital, stethoscope from Dad bouncing against my ribs like a metronome. The unit smelled of antiseptic and day-old coffee. Our instructor, Ms. Randall, wasted no time. Real patience, real stakes. You will not faint, you will not cry, you will document everything. Her voice snapped like icicles. We paired off. I landed with Dominic, a quiet kid who quoted pharmacology flashcards under his breath. First assignment, 8-bed telemetry pod, mostly heart failure cases. I practiced calming smiles in the supply closet before we entered room 1. Nothing in textbooks prepared me for that first evening shift. Mrs. Avery, mid-70s, skin parchment thin, greeted us with a joke about hospital gowns being air-conditioned. She needed vitals every 15 minutes, for antibiotics on the hour, and reassurance whenever alarms beeped. Dominic's hand shook inserting the saline flush. Mine didn't, but my stomach did barrel rolls whenever monitors spiked yellow. Night 4 hit harder. A code blue erupted 2 doors down. Nurses swarmed like storm clouds. Ms. Randall barked for crash cart, compressions started, room filled with a metallic tang of adrenaline. The patient, a man younger than Dad, flatlined despite everything. We were ordered to step back, observe, learn the anatomy of loss. I walked out 30 minutes later with rubber legs, wondered if grit alone could hold a heart together. The curveball arrived a week later. Hospital budget cuts / volunteer EMT funding, closing our rural rescue base. Overnight, ambulance shifts vanished, along with the community service hours tied to my scholarship renewal. Requirement, 100 hours by May, and I'd banked barely 40. Panic lit every nerve. Without those hours, the stipend covering books and scrubs for fall would evaporate. I spent the next afternoon in the library, calling every clinic, nursing home, hospice within 30 miles. Most were full or couldn't sign paperwork for students. Finally, a gravel voice director at Meadowbrook Assisted Living said, "We need weekend help in memory care, but it's no picnic. Residents wander, sometimes bite." My reply was instant. "I'll be there Saturday 6 a.m. Memory care felt like stepping into shifting sand. Names floated away from faces, time warped, hallways echoed with forgotten decades. Mr. Collins thought I was his wartime buddy. Mrs. Green asked every 10 minutes when her parents would pick her up. I learned distraction techniques, gentle redirection, and how to sing "You Are My Sunshine" 40 times without breaking. Paperwork tallied quickly, 12 hours each Saturday, 8 on Sunday. Exhaustion re-entered my bones, but so did purpose. Mid-February brought another test. Big Joe fell on grease, tore his rotator cuff, couldn't flip burgers for 6 weeks. He asked if I could run the grill after clinicals until closing. Money was tight. I said yes. Days blurred, hospital dawn, class midday, diner dusk, Meadowbrook weekend. Coffee replaced sleep, muscle memory replaced thought. Then influenza season kicked down Mercy County's doors. Half our cohort called in sick. Dominic landed in quarantine. Ms. Randall reassigned me to night shift, short-staff surgical ward. My first solo assignment. Post-op patient with fresh abdominal incision and uncontrolled pain. Hour 2, his blood pressure nosedived. Alarm shrilled, but I reacted on instinct. Elevated legs, called rapid response, documented vitals every 2 minutes. When the team arrived, Ms. Randall nodded once, approval sparing but bright. Later she murmured, "You kept your head." That's the difference between passing and flying. Passing and flying, 2 words that kept me awake on the bus ride home, cheeks tingling in the pre-dawn freeze. I weighed them against the emptiness of last spring's jar and felt something inside recalibrate. Success was no longer survival, it was competence. March thawed snow but not schedules. Meadowbrook added a Wednesday evening craft hour, desperate for staff. I taught residents to make paper flower bouquets, hands guiding theirs through scissors and glue. Mr. Collins called me captain and saluted every time he glued a petal straight. I laughed till my ribs ached, then cried in the supply closet because joy can hurt when you're tired. Hours logged climbed into the 70s. I could almost taste that scholarship renewal when a letter arrived from the state board. Audit. They needed verification of every service entry, signatures, dates, supervisor contacts, within 10 days. Meadowbrook's director was on family leave after her mother passed. Big Joe's arm was still in sling. Anxiety clawed my throat, but defeat wasn't on the menu. I spent one entire night off calling numbers, begging substitute administrators to fax forms, chasing signatures between med passes. Miss Wanda drove me to Mercy County at dawn to retrieve Ms. Randall's confirmation in person. We fueled on gas station donuts and her hymns humming through cracked speakers. At 11:57 on the 10th day, I slid the packet under the state board's office door, heart-pounding bump-and-run style. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope landed again in our faded mailbox, again in bold congratulations font. Renewal approved, stipend intact. I sat on the porch steps, sun finally warm, and exhaled a winter I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Dad's truck rumbled up the drive just then, engine quieter than before. He stepped out, wiped grease on jeans, and handed me a folded pay stub. "Took extra routes," he said. "Figured gas money for your clinical commute." Mom appeared with a grocery sack of oranges and instant ramen. It wasn't an apology, but maybe it was something better. Participation. April snuck in with lilac scent and final practical evaluations. In simulation lab, I nailed for insertion faster than anyone. Steady hands born of diner burns and memory care scratches. Ms. Randall clapped once, smiled full, said, "You're ready for whatever hallway life throws." I believed her. On the last day of clinicals, Mrs. Avery's daughter pressed a handwritten card into my palm. "Thank you for treating Mom like a whole person." Inside was a $50 bill. I tucked it into the shoebox, still hidden but heavier now with more than money, layered with every hour, every tear, every sunrise bus ride, the semester wrapped and grades posted, another set of straight A's. But this victory tasted different. Not relief, not revenge, just steady earned momentum. Summer loomed with new choices. Accept a paid nurse tech position at Mercy County or join a public health outreach van traveling county fairs. One promised a paycheck. The other offered adventure and resume sparkle. I stared at both letters over lukewarm diner coffee, unsure which road held the engine sound I'd learned to trust. Whichever it would be, I knew this. Jars break, truck stall, scholarships audit, influenza spreads, but persistence. Persistence starts every time you refuse to quit. And I had become fluent in that language. A week ticked by while those 2 envelopes glared at me from the dresser. Paycheck stability against road trip unknowns. It felt like flipping a coin on my whole future. Then Miss Wanda settled it the way only an 80-something sage can. She patted my hand over Sunday supper and said, "Security teaches comfort. Adventure teaches courage. Which class do you still need?" Her eyes twinkled. I exhaled, signed the outreach van contract that night, and circled June 1st on my wall calendar with a fat red marker. Departure morning. The van looked nothing like the sleek hospital shuttles in nursing magazines. It was a retired school bus painted sunflower yellow, back seats ripped out for medical supplies, vinyl letters reading Heartland Health on Wheels. We were a 5-person crew. Nurse Lopez, team lead with a smile wider than the Kansas River. Marcus, the paramedic I had shadowed last year, now official driver and playlist DJ. Denise, lab tech armed with portable blood analyzers. Tyrone, college senior studying public health. and me the rookie. First stop was Fairview County Tractor Pull. Dust spiraled as engines roared, but families lined up for blood pressure checks between competitions. I slid a cuff on a farmer whose forearms were thicker than my calves. Systolic read 170. He shrugged it off, said salt kept his cattle happy. Nurse Lopez shot me a look that translated to educate without scolding. So I swapped statistics for stories, told him about Mr. Collins humming, "You Are My Sunshine," after we lowered his numbers. The farmer chuckled, promised to trade salt shakers for spice blends. Small win, big grin. The van rolled through towns that barely made the map: Granville, Poplar Ridge, Red Clay. We set up at feed stores, VFW halls, even a church parking lot where hot asphalt melted shoe soles. I learned to run cholesterol panels in the back seat, counsel teenagers on vaping outside roller rinks, and persuade skeptical grandpas to try flu shots by reminding them of grandkids with asthma. One Saturday evening we pulled into a county fair in Willow Creek. Neon lights flickered, the air thick with funnel cake sweetness. While Marcus secured the generator, I noticed a familiar rust-red pickup parked near the livestock barn. My pulse tripped. Dad climbed out, wiping hands on jeans, Mom close behind carrying a bag of kettle corn. They hadn't seen me yet. Instinct said duck behind the van doors. Heart said step forward. I chose the latter. Need a blood pressure check? I called, voice steadier than I felt. Dad's face shifted through surprise, pride, and some emotion I couldn't name. He sat on the folding chair while I wrapped the cuff, the same one I practiced with during pathophysiology marathons. Numbers popped up, 180/95. I lifted an eyebrow. Transmission may be fixed, but your engine's running hot. He tried a joke about too much fair food, then sighed. Been skipping meds. Funds are tight. Mom stared at the asphalt. I remembered grocery sacks of oranges and ramen, the stethoscope. Time to return the favor. I stepped to the medicist table, grabbed a month's sample supply, legally allowed for outreach events, and slid it into Dad's calloused hand. Take these. We'll figure the rest later. Tension eased like a tire finding pavement. Mom hugged me so hard my badge flipped. We read every update the hospital posts, she whispered. Didn't want to call and distract you. I almost laughed. Distractions look a lot like support when you're out here. Her eyes shimmered. We'll do better, she said. I believed her. The van rolled on, but something shifted. Dad texted blood pressure readings every morning, numbers written out because I teased him about shorthand. They dropped, little by little, 170, 160, 150. Each text felt like a quiet apology spoken in millimeters of mercury. Mid-July, a heat wave turned the bus into a rolling sauna. Denise's analyzers overheated, Tyrone nearly fainted, and my scrub soaked through before noon. We parked under a lone cottonwood near Sandridge Rodeo, praying for shade. That's when an elderly woman collapsed in line, pulse thready, skin dry as parchment. Marcus called for an ambulance, but response time out here ran long. Training kicked in. I cooled her with bottled water, checked vitals every 30 seconds, and coached shallow breaths while Nurse Lopez started in 4. The ambulance arrived after 25 sweaty minutes. EMTs said our intervention likely saved her kidneys from heat stroke. As they loaded her, the woman squeezed my wrist and whispered, "You showed up." That's half the cure. That night, we camped behind a closed gas station because motels were full of rodeo fans. Cicadas buzzed like faulty transformers while we sat on the bus roof eating peanut butter from the jar. Marcus hoisted a paper cup and toast to showing up. Stars replied in silent applause. By August 1st, we'd logged over 3,000 miles, screened more than 1,600 residents, and caught 140 undiagnosed hypertension cases. Numbers written in ink on official reports, yet the deeper tally lived inside. Confidence grown, bridges mended, courage earned mile by mile. When the van finally pulled back into campus lot, radiator ticking goodbye, Nurse Lopez handed me a sealed envelope, the State Health Department commendation. You earn name recognition, she said. Hospitals, clinics, they'll fight to hire you. I traced the embossed seal, heart pacing at a comfortable 72 beats. I walked across campus to the nursing office, envelope in hand, ready to file it in my portfolio. The hallway bulletin board stopped me cold. Scholarship essay contest. Tell us how community outreach shaped your care philosophy. Winner receives full funding for final year and a mentorship with Chief Nursing Officer. Deadline, 3 days. I smiled because the hardest stories are the easiest to write when you've lived every mile. That night, under dorm room fluorescent buzz, I opened a blank document and began. The day my future stalled smelled like motor oil and burnt coffee. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat at the top of the blank screen. I cracked my knuckles, sipped black coffee, and let the memory reel unspool. The essay prompt asked how community outreach reshaped my care philosophy. I began exactly where life had demanded a detour. The day my future stalled smelled like motor oil and burnt coffee. From there, words poured out, 12 paragraphs tracing every county mile, each blood pressure cuff click, the cottonwood shade that saved a stranger's kidneys, and the moment Dad's numbers finally dipped below 150. I wrote until sunrise stained the dorm blind salmon pink, then trimmed adjectives like split ends, breathing clarity into every sentence. 7 drafts later, the word count sat just under the required 700. I printed 2 copies, one for the envelope, one for the shoebox. Waiting felt harder than any night shift. I filled the pause by volunteering extra hours at Meadowbrook, delivering cinnamon toast to Mrs. Green while she hummed forgotten lullabies. When quiet moments threatened to spiral into worry, I recited medication interactions alphabetically: aspirin before atenolol, lisinopril before lithium. The mind can't panic when it has homework. 3 weeks crawled by. On a drizzly Tuesday, the nursing office voicemail pinged. "Congratulations, you are this year's essay recipient." My squeal echoed down the dorm hall. Marisol bolted out of her room thinking someone had slipped on wet linoleum. We danced until our calves cramped. Full funding for senior year meant no diner doubles, no warehouse dawns, just clinical excellence and maybe the luxury of 8-hour sleeps. The award ceremony landed the last Friday of August, inside a hotel ballroom where chandeliers pretended to be starlight. I wore the same thrift store blazer, newly tailored by Miss Wanda's nimble hands. Dad and Mom arrived early, Mom gripping a bouquet of grocery store daisies. Dad's shirt ironed so crisp I wondered who taught him. He whispered, "Blood pressure this morning 138/82. I grinned so wide my cheeks hurt. When they called my name, applause felt louder than tractor engines. The chief nursing officer, Dr. Evelyn Brooks, silver braids slicked back like a scalpel, shook my hand and said, "Your essay showed me a nurse who already understands the hallway extends past the hospital walls." She handed over a navy folder. Inside, scholarship certificate and a mentorship schedule, monthly one-on-one sessions with her through graduation. Our first meeting happened in her corner office overlooking the river. She asked for my 5-year vision in one sentence. Panic fluttered, but truth surfaced. Serve rural patients where no one else wants to drive. She nodded, drew a circle on her notepad, marked 3 dots: clinic, telehealth hub, community van. "That's your ecosystem," she said. "Let's build skill bridges between each dot." We mapped electives, leadership workshops, and a capstone focused on mobile diabetic care. I walked out buzzing like I'd swallowed a battery. Senior coursework unfurled smoother without financial chokeholds. I traded diner grease for tutoring pharmacology underclassmen, swapped warehouse bruises for yoga with Nurse Lopez via video chat. Clinical rotation placed me in the hospital's rapid response team twice weekly. First code, I felt the familiar rush, but this time carried confidence like spare gloves. We stabilized a respiratory arrest in 4 minutes. Attending physician high-fived me outside the room. October's leaf scatter delivered another envelope, cream with gold trim. Inside, invitation to present my outreach data at the State Nursing Student Summit. On the back, Dr. Brooks had scribbled, "Stage lights build projection, not ego, stand tall." I spent nights turning blood pressure statistics into plain language slides. Each number a neighbor, each percentage a chance to prevent funerals. Summit Saturday, Dad drove the rust-red pickup, now purring after consistent maintenance, to the Capitol. Mom rehearsed my introduction in the passenger seat while I practiced breathing exercises in back. The presentation landed smooth, and a buzzed with rural nurse managers asking for copies of my protocol. An academic recruiter from the University of Kansas offered a scholarship for a future doctor of nursing practice if I ever chose grad school. I tucked the card into my pocket, heartbeat steady. Winter crept in quiet. Finals posted all as again, but grades felt like background hum compared to a deeper resonance. Self-trust. On New Year's Eve, while fireworks cracked above the trailer park, Dad handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check for $1,000, his overtime bonus. "Engine fund," he said, "for whatever road you choose next." Mom slipped a knitted scarf over my shoulders, sunflower yellow like the outreach bus. We toasted with store-brand cola and counted blessings louder than countdown numbers. Pinning ceremony arrived in May, tassels swishing like prairie grass. Dr. Brooks pinned my collar while murmuring, "Now go shorten the distance between need and care." Dad's eyes watered. Mom's cheers echoed off gym rafters. As graduates flung caps skyward, I thought of that empty mason jar and smiled. Sometimes broken containers simply reroute the flow. Job offers landed within days. Mercy County's Rapid Response Unit, Meadowbrook's Nurse Supervisor track, and a brand new role Dr. Brooks carved out. Mobile Clinic Coordinator bridging hospital resources to outlying farms. I chose the last option. The contract included salary, loan forgiveness, and a refurbished van painted sunflower yellow, this time with my name on the license. The night before the first solo trip, I opened the shoebox one last time. Inside were relics: the printed scholarship essay, Dad's original stethoscope, Mrs. Avery's daughter's thank you card, and 5 crisp $20 bills from my earliest diner tips. I closed the lid, sealed it with duct tape, and labeled it proof. Proof that detours can redraw maps, that persistence can out-throttle poverty, and that engines, human or mechanical, run longest when treated with steady hands. At dawn, I slid into the driver's seat, sunflower paint catching pink light. The road ahead stretched flat and welcoming. I turned the ignition. The engine hummed like a promise, and I drove toward the horizon, ready to show up, mile after mile, where care was still a luxury and nurses were still rare. Dawn broke like copper across the prairie the day I steered the refurbished sunflower van onto Highway 17. My route held 3 stops: a hog farm co-op, a one-room library doubling as town hall, and a migrant worker camp tucked behind grain silos. A thermos of gas station coffee sat in the cup holder. Dad's scarf hung from the mirror like a pennant. I hummed with equal parts nerves and horsepower. First call, the co-op. 20 hog farmers in mud-spattered coveralls filed past my fold-out table. I drew A1C blood drops, flagged 4 sky-high sugars, and printed diet sheets heavy on cheap proteins instead of drive-through biscuits. One farmer muttered he'd rather wrestle a hog than give up sweet tea. I countered with a challenge: walk the barn loop twice a day, swap 1 soda for water, text me numbers in 2 weeks. He grinned, spit into the straw, and said deal. Next stop, Willow Bend Library, population maybe 200. The librarian, Mrs. Ortiz, greeted me with homemade oatmeal cookies and a stack of dusty romance novels she thought patients might enjoy while waiting. I treated a toddler's ear infection, arranged a telehealth call for a pregnant teen too shy to speak above a whisper, and spent lunch break teaching Mrs. Ortiz how to order flu vaccines online. Helping the helper felt like plugging a leak upstream. The final leg was hardest. The migrant camp sat 5 miles off pavement, tents flapping like tired flags. Language barrier? Taller than the grain silos. I powered up a translation app and greeted workers in slow Spanish. A mother cradled a baby burning with fever. The on-call doctor videoed in, guided me through infant dosage of acetaminophen, praised the mother's quick instinct. She wept thank yous. I tucked a week's worth of liquid meds in her bag and wrote dosage times in pictograms on duct tape. As sunset painted the sky tangerine, I logged miles, vitals, and supply counts, then pointed the van home. Mid-drive, my phone buzzed Dad. "You on the road?" he asked. "Just leaving the camp," I answered. "Highway traffic's light." He exhaled. "Mom worries." I smiled into the fading light. "Tell her the engine runs strong." Back in town, I filed electronic charts until midnight. Before shutting the laptop, an email pinged from Dr. Brooks. "CDC Rural Health Division, read your summit slides. They want you to present at their spring symposium. Travel stipend included." My jaw dropped. Me, a mechanic's daughter whose tuition once morphed into truck parts, invited to brief national policymakers. I closed my eyes, pictured the mason jar, the shoebox, the sunflower bus. Every detour had laid gravel for this stretch of highway. I typed a quick yes, saved the date, then called voicemail at 2 a.m. "Dad, Mom, guess who's taking this yellow van story to Washington, D.C. No answer till morning, but that was fine. Some victories glow best in silent cabins before dawn. I curled under the knitted scarf, heartbeat idling steady, ready for whatever mile marker rose next. The flight to Washington, D.C. was my first time on a plane. I clutched my carry-on, a second-hand laptop, neatly folded blazer, and printed copies of my presentation slides, like it held the key to my entire story. Somewhere over Missouri, I looked out the window and whispered, "You made it," not to impress, but to remember. The symposium hall was colder than I expected, all glass walls and polished name tags. I stood behind the podium as a sea of policymakers, health directors, and educators looked on. My voice wavered once, then steadied. I told them about the mason jar, the empty bank account, the counties where no one had seen a nurse in 3 years. I shared blood pressure numbers that saved grandfathers, language barriers bridged with phone apps, and a mobile clinic painted sunflower yellow. Applause came slow then full. Afterward, 3 program officers asked for copies of my outreach protocol. A senior official with the CDC Rural Health Office shook my hand and said, "We need more nurses like you, who remember the people beneath the policy." That evening, I video called home. Mom answered first, wiping her eyes before she could speak. "We watched the live stream," she said. "You didn't just fix your future. You fixed our faith in what's possible." Dad leaned into frame, voice gravel soft. "We're proud of you. Truck or no truck." I smiled, blinked away tears. "Thanks," I said. "But the road's still long." He nodded. "And you've got the keys now." As the call ended, I turned off the hotel lamp, slid under crisp white sheets, and let the quiet settle. Success hadn't erased the struggle, it had honored it. And that made the journey worth every mile. 3 months after the symposium, I was back in Kansas, stethoscope around my neck, sunflower van humming steady. But something had changed, not the road, not the miles, but me. Confidence no longer felt like borrowed armor. It was mine, stitched from each early shift, each unpaid favor, each moment I chose to keep going. One afternoon, I pulled into the co-op and found that same farmer from a year ago, the one who once laughed off high blood pressure. He waved me over, pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. It was his latest lab report. Numbers down, weight down, walking twice a day like I'd suggested. "You said small changes could lead to big ones," he said. "You were right." That night, back at my small apartment above the town pharmacy, I lit a single candle and opened the shoebox one last time. Inside were pieces of every chapter: the scholarship letter, Dr. Brooks' mentorship notes, clinic photos, Dad's old pay stub, the first $20 diner tip. I held them in my hands and smiled. Then I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and started writing something new. An application to fund a statewide mobile nursing program. Not just one van. 5, 10. As many as it would take to close the gap still yawning across rural highways. Because this wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about proving what's possible when someone believes in you. Especially when that someone is yourself. And if you're watching this wondering if your story is too broken, your detour too long, hear this: you are not behind. You are becoming. The road may be rough, but you're already driving it. Keep going. We'll meet at the next mile.